Oh, hey y'all. I'm actually really excited for the movie for today. I think it's probably the best one so far. I mean, we're pretty early, so that could change, but it's one that's been on the radar for a little while. The movie for today, or I guess October 6th, is Talk to Me from 2023, I believe. Um, yeah, I'm really bad about like watching stuff I actually want to watch, but this has been on HBO for a while, so thought now was time. But yeah, watched it, enjoyed it immensely. Um, this one's cool though, because I mean, it is strictly horror. I feel like some of the movies I've watched so far have just been more, like nice for the season, nice for Halloween, nice for October. But this one is just like, solid horror, and it's one of those ones where there's lots to dissect. That's kind of the great thing about horror, though. It's a really good genre to explore like a bunch of different, like topics and stuff. And then I think with this one, um, it'd be really nice just to get some feedback because whenever I watch things, I kind of just like watch them and like whatever I think, I think, and if I'm, really, I guess excited about it or like kind of like gets my mind racing, I'll like write a lot about it. But I just kind of keep it to myself. I don't really like being influenced by other opinions. Like I won't like go out of my way to like look for reviews or look for like the meaning behind blank. Um, because I feel like what I think is, you know, uh, or I guess what you think personally about something is obviously gonna like hold more weight compared to like what you end up reading, or like hearing. For the most part, I guess, but sort of depends. It depends, I guess. But I hold my like initial opinions on stuff like at a high value, and then maybe over time, if I'm still like obsessed with it, I'll do some research and whatnot. But all that being said, everything that I'm gonna say right now is just like pure what I thought while watching it, and it might be wrong. I might be way off base with what I think. So if I am, let me know, I guess, or maybe like in time if I'm still thinking about this movie, which I probably will, since there's a lot to go over. I'll probably just end up doing my own research onto like what some of like the metaphors and like themes were more about. But I guess I'll start off saying spoilers. I guess just because I do want to talk about like a lot of the aspects in the movie. So I mean that behind us. I guess I'll just say starting off, I feel like because the main thing is the hand. You touch the hand, and it allows you to like communicate with the dead. At this point, the main character Mia, she's grieving over her dead mother. So this, even though she doesn't really know how it works, it sort of builds up to her being able to talk with her mom. Um, so I feel like that's important because there is this kind of like underlying grief that she has about losing her mother, and I feel like she does try to find solace in people initially. She has her friends Jade and Riley, and their mom Sue is sort of like another mother to her, and I feel like she gets along fine with these people, for the time. Um, and maybe she's like moving past her grief a little bit, but obviously it still weighs on her, losing her mother. But that's something that I thought was interesting though, because like there is a sort of reoccurring thing that people say about Mia is that she's clingy. She's too clingy. She always wants to be around. Oh, she's always with you and your family. Um, and then the other character, the one who introduces him to the hand, Haley. Um, like yeah, she said it straight up. She's like, oh, I don't like her. She's too clingy. She like brings the mood down. So that's something interesting about Mia specifically, and again, like the way she handles her grief is clinging to people. Like she needs to be around. She needs, in a sort of selfish way, she wants like acknowledgement. Um, I mean, like obviously when you're grieving, you'll react differently, and sometimes you can't really control it, but to other people, that's how they see it. Um, and so it's sort of like bizarre thinking about like relationships in that way. But that's sort of how it's presented in the movie. to me at least. And so I thought that was interesting, and it's a good like stepping point to the hand, because I think the hand is a metaphor for substance abuse, or at least like substance, and then obviously they end up abusing the substance. Um, telltales for me is just obviously the first time Mia grabs the hand, or for that fact anybody grabs the hand, they're sort of it's also a really cool shot as well, where like they sort of like lean back, and it's almost like they're filled with like ecstasy or whatever. So I guess that like sensation of like taking a drug, or indulging in something, it gets your brain firing, and that's kind of what they display like with that shot. They sort of like lean back, like head facing up, and like their eyes just like widen out. So it's like a rush in the moment whenever they touch the hand and start talking, or like let the spirit into them. And then even afterwards, the first time, like Mia says, like, yeah, like that was awesome. Like even though it was like sort of scary at first, like it was cool. I mean, just think about most drugs, and when I say drugs, I mean more like like more extreme drugs. I'm talking, obviously I've never done it, but I'm talking like just from like movie depictions and stuff. I'd say just like heroin, like cocaine, stuff like that, like really like hard drugs. And I feel like that's what like the hand kind of represents, just like hard substance. Because I mean, initially it is like very exhilarating, but like over time it kind of takes over your life, and that's sort of what happens like to Mia throughout. Like at first she does it, and sure she's scared, but after the fact she's like, man, this is cool, and she becomes obsessed with it, and then through her obsession, it's so and since the hand lets you talk to dead people, it eventually builds up to her, like being able to speak with her mother. So she has this connection, from the drugs to her mom. So that kind of amplifies the grief, because then she keeps going back to the hand, the drug, just to keep feeling this connection with somebody she lost. So I guess just the takeaway for me is just like grief going hand in hand with like eventual substance abuse, or like using substance and abusing substance in order to get over your grief. But in reality, that's not how it works. There's ways to cope, sure, but that's obviously a very negative way. Um, yeah, but I mean, even then, that's kind of what I think about the whole like hand situation. And I mean, like it's always represented like in a very interesting way, very different, obviously. Um, so that's one thing, and then I guess I mentioned something about grief. That's another. But then also, since it is about substance, or like with the way I'm thinking about it, it being about substance, there's also sort of like a smaller theme about peer pressure as well, which is pretty interesting. And I mean, my only backup for that is just the way all the kids sort of act around the hand, or like the way they like talk about it. Uh, like I mentioned the character Haley, and she's sort of just like a side character, but she's the one that kind of introduces the main group to the hand. And I mean, she's basically like a plug. There's a scene where they go up to her and it's like, oh, like we tried it that one time, but like our friend also wants to try it too. So just like a social element to like using substances. Um, and then obviously whenever he tries it, the other friend, it's sort of like a bad trip experience for him, because he starts like acting a bit weird. But whenever that happens, it's sort of the thing that like I guess kind of happens whenever you go like a bit off the rails when like having substance. Like it can be a bit embarrassing, and that's how it was for him. And he kind of just like gets up after his encounter, he leaves the room. Uh, so that's like a small thing, but then also everybody just like kind of egging each other on to like touch the hand and like do the little ritual. Because I mean, like for them, it is just like a game almost. Uh, and I feel like that's kind of how it is sometimes with people as well. Like using substance, it just seems like fun, but obviously the overindulgence is what's bad about it. And another small thing too about just I guess like gateway almost, since we are talking about substances. One of the first scenes is about um, Riley, his friend, is like trying to give him a cigarette, and at the time he doesn't take it. But like they say like cigarettes are gateway drugs, or like weed is a gateway drug to like harder substances, and that's kind of how it goes for Riley's character. He's introduced to that, but like he knows cigarettes are bad, so he doesn't do it. But then whenever he sees everybody in the group kind of having fun with the hand, he's like, well, I want to try that as well. So again with the peer pressure element. Um, yeah, so like those are like the main things I was sort of thinking about, at least with like the hand. As for the rest of the movie, just like great, lots of drama. Uh, for me, like I've seen a lot, but like even some of this stuff was like pretty intense. I'd say, the scene where like Riley finally tries the substance and like whatever possessed him just like makes him like try to kill himself immediately. So again, like another bad trip metaphor, I guess. But yeah, his scene is brutal, pretty brutal. And then I do like how brutal it is because it's meant to just weigh on the rest of the movie, and it does. Like a lot of the movie is about like Riley and his condition, and how like the other people are kind of coping with that. And then obviously with like Mia, she just like regresses and like keeps going back to the hand for like answers or anything really. And then the actual family, Jade and Sue, they're just like trying to be there for him and uh, yeah, just like be around and be supportive. Which is obviously the more positive way to do it. Like you got to do it sober sometimes, and that's what his family does, and that's kind of like the great benefit to him. It's weird because they do mention offhand a few times, like, oh yeah, like Riley's getting better, but then obviously Mia doesn't see it that way because again she's just going back to the hand, and the hand is telling her something else. Uh, which is like sort of like a cool thing. It becomes like an unreliable narrator sort of situation. I feel like as an audience, you almost want to sympathize with Mia, obviously because she's like the main character. But then she's grieving, and she's finally given this way to communicate with the person she lost, and that person she lost is giving her this, advice. Um, and so you're kind of torn. You're like, I don't know, maybe like yeah, it's her mom, so maybe she should listen to her. But obviously, if you are thinking about it a bit more critically, it's like okay, this is like a bit off somewhere, because like like at the end of the day, it is like spirits, and I mean a lot of spirits typically try to manipulate the people that they're communicating with, and that's obviously the case here. Um, this is another movie too that has a few dream sequences or sort of like hallucination sequences, and they work relatively well. I enjoyed them quite a lot. Um, they're able to like explore like some more horror through those dream sequences, and for the most part, it's really good. And I guess before I forget, another like smaller sort of theme that comes up. I don't know if I would consider it a theme, more of a trope. Um, but it's sort of like in Get Out, and there's another movie too. I think like a Netflix made movie, um, but sort of the same setup as Get Out, where it's about a guy going with his girlfriend to like visit his parents, visit the parents or whatever. Uh, so then obviously in Get Out, he hits like a deer or something like that, if I remember correctly. And in this other movie, I'm thinking of like, man, if y'all kind of know what I'm talking about, let me know because I was trying to find it. Uh, yeah, I was trying to find it yesterday, couldn't find it, so I kind of gave up on it. But I feel like it's worth mentioning because I feel like it kind of strengthens the example I'm trying to give, or just provides a bit more context, I guess. But both those movies and in this one, they hit an animal, and they find it difficult. They find it difficult to like put the animal out of its misery, and that's sort of something that comes up. Like they hit the animal or they pass an animal that's like injured, and it's like, well, like what do we do? Like it's suffering, yeah, but I don't really want to kill an animal. Uh, and then I guess it's sort of a setup to just, like give you an idea of like where the main character like kind of stands morally, and it is just sort of a good moral question at that. You see something suffering and you want to, help it, but how do you help it? Do you let it, continue suffering, or do you, you know? But yeah, so that shows up in this movie as well at the very beginning, and then it kind of comes back at the very end. I'm a little torn on how they bring it back up because I mean initially, it's brought up very well because that's sort of what the spirits are like trying to convey to Mia is that Riley's like that animal, and he needs help because he's suffering, and the only way to help him is to kill him. But they sort of set up earlier that if you die while you're like possessed, then you're gonna be taken over by the spirits. Um, whatever that means. They're sort of vague about it, but I mean, you can kind of draw your own conclusions based on what you see. So that's kind of what Mia has to go through. It's like, well, I'm being told that killing Riley is the best thing for him, but then, as an audience, you're like, well, with everything that we know and everything that you kind of know, maybe killing him isn't the best thing. Maybe you should just let him like write it out. But that's another thing that sort of shows up in the movie, and I thought it was really interesting because it's a thing that sort of pops up in other horror movies as well. Um, yeah, because then obviously in Get Out, with him and his character, um, I think he does end up putting the animal like out of it, but it sort of goes back because I mean like with his mom, he like sort of like leaves her to die, so that was like another situation where like it's like somebody's suffering and he does nothing, and then it comes back again at the very end of Get Out where the woman that was taken over by the grandmother, uh, one of the other people that was what's the word put into the upside down, right? Um, her like he's like debating on whether or not to go back for her, and he eventually does. So like that's him like finally acting. And then in this movie, same thing. I'm pretty sure Mia doesn't act with the animal that they find. Like she says, yeah, well, like somebody else will come by. So that's her being like inactive in her life, and then it also ties back to her mother because her mother like dies from substance abuse, and I guess that's another comparison as well with substance. Like her mother was like suffering for so long, and the mother turns to substance in order to escape herself. And I mean, it's sort of a weird situation because obviously, like Mia has no control over that. Her mother's her own person, and her mother chose to do those things. But Mia sort of like blames herself for it, and blames herself for not being able to act and help her mother like in the ways like she probably wanted to. And then again, like that relates to like Mia and Riley's situation. Like Mia feels like it's finally time to act and put Riley out of his misery. Uh, but then it's kind of nice a moment at the end where she sort of like lets go because you think she's about to push him into traffic, which would have been pretty brutal. But she chooses to let go, and then the bit afterwards, it's I feel like it's up for interpretation because Jade shows up, and it's either Jade pushes her to save Riley or Mia just jumps off herself. And I guess it could be either or. Uh, and I guess it's again just like up to how you interpret it. Um, what fucking point was I trying to? I don't know. I feel like the point was made. I feel like I was giving a lot of examples, so you kind of get the point. But yeah, but um, yeah, it's bothering me now. I don't know what the fuck point I was trying to make. I feel like I kept going on too many tangents. Uh, so I guess new point. Okay, yeah, there we go. I was just giving examples so I could talk about how I'm like kind of torn on how it ends. Uh, yeah, but they've done such a great job like building up this concept about helping someone by like relieving their suffering, uh, and it's all kind of just like done organically. But then I hate that there's a like minor dream sequence uh, where she sees the kangaroo again, just so it's like the audience, if they weren't like fully paying attention, the audience can be like, oh, it's like the kangaroo. So kind of dumb, and I feel like that's the thing. Sometimes you do need to put the obvious out there because it can be hard for an audience to track. But I I really do believe in just giving the audience the benefit of the doubt a lot of the time. And I mean, in this case, I kind of would have preferred it. I feel like just having the kangaroo show up in a dream sequence is a bit on the nose. But for people, I feel like it's helpful regardless. So I don't know. Me personally, I'm a bit torn, but I can see why they added it. And then the ending is cool too. It's just like a nice little I guess like twist, almost not really a twist, but kind of like the dark ending, I guess, because like Mia dies, and she's another person that somebody else with a hand like tries to communicate with. So that was kind of cool to see. But overall, great. I mean, all the acting, stellar. Honestly, I feel like I picked up on most of it, and I found all of it very interesting. And I mean, even if I'm like off, I feel like what I've thought about while watching it is just as interesting. But I mean, again, like, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me what y'all thought. Tell me if y'all picked up on anything different than I did. Because I'd like to hear it before going off and like doing my own research about other like interpretations of it. But yeah, I mean, it's another thing too because it's like A24, so I mean, like A24 is just kind of like a seal of approval or like a seal of quality almost. And I mean, you can like agree or disagree with that, but they do have a pretty stacked lineup, and most of what they've produced has been quality. And I mean, even if like not quality, it's always something interesting, I'd say, because I mean, even some of the A24 films that I'm just like kind of iffy about, they're still incredibly well made, and they still kind of have something to say. So. And I mean, this one's like a perfect balance. It looks really good. It's like very well acted. Very, like the score is pretty good as well. Like whenever it pops up here and there, and yeah, just quality all around. And it has something to say on top of that. You know, I feel like I'm like putting more meaning onto it, but I still found it really interesting. And I mean, like aside from A24, it's also like an Australian film based in Australia, made by Australians. I don't know, but a lot of the other production studios attached to it are like from Australia. And I know Australia has like weird standards for like the media they try to produce. I mean, like I'm thinking recently, like what is it? Memoir of a Snail, right? Another film made in Australia. Uh, but yeah, I guess Australians just have like a lot of pride, especially when it comes to stuff that they're making and like the stuff that they're trying to show to the world. But yeah, but Memoir of a Snail is just another like Australian film, or is it New Zealand? I always get confused with the two, because they both talk the same. No, I mean they kind of do, but both of them just kind of have like cool cultures, and both of them just kind of have like a lot of like pride when it comes to what they show. Is what I'm getting at. So that's also like double why this movie is just like pure quality to me at least. Um, but yeah, obviously with like how much I've been blushing about it, and like talking about like some of the more deeper meanings, just I recommend it without a doubt. And kind of sucks it took me a while to get to it, but I'm happy I finally got to it, no doubt. So yeah, if you haven't watched it, watch it. Uh, or if you're on the fence about it, I mean, hopefully you didn't just listen to this and like have it spoiled for you. Pretty much, hopefully you saw it and like that was your reminder to get back to it. So hopefully you watched it and then maybe came back and listened to this. Maybe, but regardless, tell me what you think. Uh, if there's anything that I'm kind of missing, which I probably am. I feel like uh, with movies like this and the subject matter and like with like kind of how much it goes on, I feel like I'm bound up to miss a few things, but this is one, since I've recommended, I obviously really like it, and it's one that I would just rewatch. So maybe like if I'm still like thinking about it pretty consistently throughout the month, I'll give it a rewatch by the end of the month, or at least by the end of the year. You know, a lot of movies that I really like, I just rewatch like every so often, every few months. So this is one that I'll revisit. But yeah, take care.